No one noticed the hotel cleaner until she spoke fluent Dutch in front of a billionaire. Welcome to Cracks of Light, where we shine a light on the stories the world almost missed. Today's story begins in silence, with a hotel cleaner, overlooked and forgotten, blending into the marble halls of a five-star hotel. She swept floors, changed sheets, moved quietly through the corridors like she didn't exist. No one asked her name. No one cared. But everything changed in 60 seconds. During a quiet lunch break, she answered a phone call. One sentence, spoken fluently in Dutch. What she didn't realize was that the billionaire owner of the hotel was standing right behind her. He froze. He listened. And by the next morning, she wasn't holding a mop. She was holding a new job title created just for her. So what did he see? What was she hiding? And how did a forgotten hotel cleaner become the woman everyone would soon be talking about? You're about to find out. But before we dive into the full story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Cracks of Light so we can keep bringing you true stories that flicker with hope and burn with surprise. Let's begin. They called her the Ghost in Blue. At least that's what the other staff sometimes joked, not out of malice, but because Anna moved so quietly through the marble corridors of the Grand Mira Hotel that most guests never saw her. She arrived before dawn, long before the first lights flickered on in the luxury suites, and she left well after midnight, when the chandeliers dimmed and the lobby piano fell silent. No one ever asked about her life, and she never offered it. That was the rule of survival. Be useful, be invisible, and never speak unless asked. She wore the uniform like armor, stiff navy jacket, hair tied back in a low knot, no earrings, no perfume, nothing that might say I'm here. But she was. And every day she passed the same wall of award photos near the executive elevators. She let her eyes drift for 1 second, not to the people in them, but to the framed languages on the plaques. English, French, Mandarin, Japanese, Dutch. Her fingers twitched every time. Those weren't just languages to her. They were memories, pieces of the life she once believed she'd live. And it hadn't always been cleaning hotel bathrooms. She used to write papers about syntax and phonetics, used to memorize foreign proverbs for fun. At 20, she won a regional scholarship for excellence in linguistics. At 22, she stood on a university stage in a second-hand dress that didn't quite fit, shaking hands with deans who predicted she'd work in embassies or translate in international courts. Her professors loved her. Her classmates envied her. But none of them knew the weight she was carrying. She didn't tell them that her father had already been deported, or that her mother was waiting tables under a fake name, with lungs that coughed blood when winter came. Anna kept her grades perfect, not because of pride, but because failure meant losing her visa, and losing her visa meant losing everything. When her mother died the summer after graduation, Anna didn't cry. She went silent. She packed everything she owned into a single suitcase, took the first job she could find, and made herself disappear. The hotel hired her under a contract meant for international housekeepers. It was legal enough to survive, but not safe enough to build anything. She couldn't afford mistakes. Every day, she cleaned luxury rooms she'd never sleep in, wiped mirrors she couldn't afford to look into for too long. She counted towels like her life depended on it, because it did. But at night, when her shift ended, Anna didn't go straight home. She rode the bus to a corner library in the foreign quarter, sat at the last computer by the window, and logged in with a fake membership card. There, she practiced language tests, grammar drills, Dutch podcasts she could barely hear over the hum of fluorescent lights. She wrote notes in the margins of napkins, corrected herself aloud under her breath. One librarian once asked her, "Why Dutch?" Anna had smiled and lied. "I just think it sounds nice." The truth was less poetic. Dutch was hard. It didn't sing like French or echo like Japanese, but it gave her a strange kind of peace, like learning a new alphabet for a life that might still be waiting. Most of her coworkers didn't know this side of her. They saw Anna the way she wanted to be seen. Quiet, fast, dependable. She never joined lunch conversations, never complained. She avoided attention with surgical precision. But she watched everything. She knew which guests tipped and which ones didn't. She knew which managers played favorites. She knew the rhythm of the building, the secret doors that led to the service corridors, the time of day when the hot water pressure dropped on the 7th floor. The hotel was her map now, and she memorized it like a second skin. She rented a room above a fish market in a crumbling part of the city, where the walls peeled and the heater worked only when it wanted to. She lived alone, not because she was antisocial, but because she couldn't risk letting anyone close enough to ask questions. She kept her clothes folded military neat, books stacked in language families, and taped a photo of her mother to the inside of her closet. Sometimes she whispered to it in Spanish before work. One sentence, the one her mother had taught her. Haz lo correcto, incluso cuando duele. Do what's right, even when it hurts. There were moments, rare ones, when she almost forgot how different her life was from the one she served. Like when she accidentally walked into a conference room and heard a diplomat mispronounce a word in Dutch. She instinctively corrected it under her breath. The man never heard, but a part of her felt both satisfied and sad. Satisfied because she still knew. Sad because knowing meant nothing down here. She wasn't the girl from the scholarship photos anymore. She was the girl who unclogged toilets in $800 a night rooms. And yet, something in her refused to die. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe pride. But every morning, she still rehearsed vocabulary on the bus. Still kept a notebook of translation notes tucked in her locker. Still dreamed in languages that no one else around her spoke. She told herself it didn't matter. That life had made its decision, and she had to accept it. But deep down, there was still a question that burned quietly every time she stared into the hotel's mirrored lobby and saw her reflection blur behind the marble. What if this isn't the end? Anna didn't know that someone was watching. Not yet. She didn't know that one misplaced phone call would unravel the entire pattern she'd spent years stitching into place. She didn't know that someone who'd walked those same back corridors decades earlier, someone who once believed no one saw him either, was about to notice the ghost in blue. Anna didn't expect the message to come that day. She had just finished stripping linens from Suite 410 when her phone buzzed in her pocket, 3 times, quick and urgent. She almost didn't check it. Phones weren't allowed during shift hours unless it was an emergency. But something in her chest told her to break the rule. She stepped into the staff break room, still holding a bundle of towels against her side, and saw the notification. One line from a familiar number. You passed. Call when you can. Her heart thumped once, then again, harder. Her fingers trembled as she dropped the towels, fumbling to unlock the screen. She looked around. Empty. The break room was quiet. A microwave hummed. The vending machine buzzed. She hit call. On the 3rd ring, a voice answered. Anna, are you sitting down? It was Professor Willem, her Dutch language mentor. She didn't even think. She answered in Dutch. Did I really pass? Her voice cracked as she spoke. You didn't just pass, Willem said. You placed in the top 5%. You're now professionally certified. Anna's laugh broke like glass. She covered her mouth. Her eyes burned. She forgot about the mop, the towels, the clock on the wall. Everything disappeared but the voice on the line and the language that had taken her 2 years to master on midnight train rides and library keyboards. Dank je, Willem. Ik kan het niet geloven. Her Dutch was sharp, smooth, fluent. She said thank you again, said she couldn't believe it. And just as she said the words, the door creaked behind her. She turned. Her stomach dropped. Standing there was a man she had never seen in person, but whose portrait hung in every executive corridor. Lucas Renard, founder of Renard International, sole owner of the Grand Mira Hotel. The billionaire who never stayed long in one place and rarely spoke to staff. Tall, clean-shaven, in a gray coat that didn't need a brand label to scream power. His eyes were fixed on her. Not hostile, not kind, just sharp, studying, listening. I'm sorry, Anna said quickly, switching to English as she scrambled to end the call. I was just on my break. Lucas didn't answer right away. He stepped into the room, glanced at the phone in her hand. Dutch. His voice was calm, quiet. Anna nodded. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Where did you learn it? She hesitated. Her pulse was still racing. I studied languages in university. I kept practicing. It's a passion. He looked at her name tag. Anna. No last name. Just Anna. His gaze lingered a second longer than it needed to. Then he gave a slight nod. "Enjoy the rest of your lunch," he said, and walked out without another word. The silence he left behind felt louder than anything else in the room. Anna stood frozen, her phone still warm in her palm. She stared at the closed door, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He'd heard her. He had stood there and listened, and he had asked about her. Not the towels, not the room assignments, her. That had never happened before. She finished her shift in a fog. Every minute dragged under the weight of what-ifs. What if she'd said something wrong? What if this was a violation? Would she be written up? Transferred? Fired? She barely heard the chatter in the laundry room. Barely noticed when she bumped into the service cart on the 6th floor. Something had changed, but she didn't know what it was yet. That night, she replayed it in her head. His voice, the pause before he spoke, the way he said her name like it meant something. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she arrived early, more anxious than usual. She kept her head down, cleaned faster, avoided the lobby, tried to disappear again. But right before noon, her supervisor found her. "HR wants to see you." Now. Anna blinked. "HR? What?" The woman shrugged. "Didn't say. Just go." Her hands felt numb as she walked to the administrative wing. No one ever called housekeeping into HR unless something had gone wrong. She knocked on the glass door. A woman in a navy blazer looked up. "You're Anna?" "Yes." "Come in." Closed the door. Anna sat stiffly in the leather chair across from her. "We received a direct request this morning," the HR director said, folding her hands on the desk. "From Mr. Renard himself." Anna stopped breathing. "He would like you reassigned." "Reassigned?" "Yes. Effective immediately. You're moving into a newly created role under the International Guest Services Department. You'll be working closely with clients who require language assistance." Anna stared at her. "Why me?" "Mr. Renard believes your talents are underutilized." The HR director slid a folder across the desk. "This is your new contract. The compensation will be 3 times your current wage." Anna didn't touch the folder. She couldn't move. "I don't understand. I never applied for anything." "You didn't have to. You spoke Dutch." That sentence hit harder than she expected. She had spoken Dutch. Not for anyone else. Not to impress. Just for herself, for the memory of who she used to be. And someone had heard. As she walked out of HR, still holding the folder like it might explode, everything around her felt unfamiliar. The walls she used to scrub looked taller. The uniforms of other staff felt heavier. She wasn't one of them anymore. And yet she was. She stepped into the elevator alone, watched the numbers rise, and realized this was the first time she'd ever gone past the 9th floor. At lunch, she sat outside alone and tried to calm her breathing. She remembered the way Lucas had looked at her, not with kindness, not with pity, but with interest, like he saw something, like he'd recognized her in a way no one else had in years. The call had lasted 90 seconds. The moment had lasted less, but something in it had shifted her entire trajectory. She didn't know what he wanted, didn't know what this new position meant. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something she hadn't dared to imagine. And it all started with one call, in one language, spoken on a day that was supposed to be just like any other. Anna arrived 30 minutes early, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she didn't know what else to do with herself. She stood in the hallway outside the executive lounge, wearing a blouse and skirt she'd been handed that morning by HR. They fit perfectly, too perfectly, as if someone had been watching her long enough to guess her exact measurements. Her name tag had changed too. No longer housekeeping Anna. Now it read guest liaison. No department, no floor. Just a title vague enough to mean anything and nothing. When the door finally opened, a staff member in a headset motioned her inside. She stepped into the room, pulse hammering, unsure where to look. At the far end of the table sat Lucas Renard. He didn't stand. He didn't smile. He just studied her the same way he had the day before, like she was a language he'd once learned and almost forgotten. "Sit," he said simply. She obeyed. The silence stretched. Then he asked, "How many languages do you speak?" "5," she said. "Fluently?" "3. Working on the rest." "Dutch, French, English." And Spanish, she added. My first. Why didn't you list that on your application? There was no application. He paused. She saw something flicker in his expression. Interest. Maybe approval. He leaned back slightly. Do you know who we're meeting with this afternoon? She shook her head. No one told me. Good, he said. I want to see what you do when you don't have time to prepare. Her chest tightened. Is this a test? Everything is, he said. Especially this. She didn't ask for details. She didn't want to look ungrateful. But her palms were sweating and her throat felt dry. The room had no clock, but she counted seconds in her head like it might help. Lucas stood abruptly. Come with me. She followed him down 2 corridors and into a glass-walled conference room where 2 men in dark suits were already seated. One stood, nodded. Huna. Gentlemen, Lucas said. Then he gestured toward Anna. This is Anna. She'll be assisting with translation. The men exchanged glances. Dutch. Their accents confirmed it before they spoke. Lucas sat. Anna remained standing for a beat too long before taking the chair beside him. No briefing. No agenda. Just her, a notebook, and 2 foreign investors who didn't seem pleased to see her. The older of the 2 spoke first. He addressed Lucas in English, but his Dutch slipped through between syllables. Formal. Guarded. Anna tracked every word. He questioned the terms of the expansion project, asked about brand reputation, market risk. Lucas answered with crisp precision. But when the second man spoke, fast-clipped, intentionally vague, Lucas hesitated. Anna didn't. She leaned in slightly and spoke in Dutch, reframing the question, softening the challenge, adding cultural nuance that made the response feel less like a defense and more like a dialogue. The man blinked, surprised, then nodded. Lucas didn't look at her, but she felt the shift. They kept going. 45 minutes. Questions about ethics, labor, taxes, reputation management. Anna translated everything, but more than that, she bridged tones, inserted pauses, altered phrasing just enough to keep the conversation moving. Not once did Lucas stop her. Not once did the men interrupt her. When the meeting ended, the Dutchman stood, shook hands, and offered a compliment that needed no translation. She's sharp, one said to Lucas in Dutch. More than sharp, the other added. Rare. Lucas simply nodded. I know. When they left, Anna exhaled for the first time in nearly an hour. Her head pounded from concentration. Lucas looked at her, not with warmth, but with something colder, more precise. You adjusted on the fly, he said. You didn't ask me what to say. You just listened. That's what you wanted, right? She said, quieter than she meant. I wanted to see if you belonged in the room. You do. She didn't know how to answer that. He didn't wait for one. You'll receive your briefing schedule tomorrow. There will be more meetings. I'll expect you to adapt. Then he turned and left. No congratulations. No thank you. Just expectation. But for Anna, that was enough. She walked out of the conference room on legs that barely felt solid. No one congratulated her in the hallway. No one knew what she'd just done. But she did. That night, she didn't take the bus straight home. She stopped at the library, sat at her usual terminal, typed in a few new Dutch phrases. Not because she needed them, because it reminded her she was still learning. The next week, everything changed. She received schedules by email, got access to the internal calendar, a security badge that opened more doors than she'd known existed. Lucas didn't speak to her often, but he started appearing more. Sometimes in passing, sometimes in meetings where he let her take the lead. Once in an elevator, they stood side by side in silence. Then he said, They asked if I hired you because you were pretty. She froze. What did you say? I said I didn't notice. She turned her head. Did you? I noticed you were fluent in 4 languages, he said, and that you knew how to stay silent when others needed to speak. It wasn't a compliment. It was data, observation. But coming from him, it felt like more. Over time, she learned to watch his patterns. Lucas didn't praise. He redirected. He didn't joke. He assessed. But sometimes, when they were the last 2 left in the room, he asked questions that didn't feel like tests. Why Dutch? He asked once. It's hard to lie in Dutch, she said. He almost smiled. Another time. What did you want to be before all this? She paused. A linguist. A diplomat. Someone who mattered. He didn't respond. But his silence said he understood. Her presence in meetings became routine. Other executives began to include her. Some resented her. Some tried to outpace her. She stayed quiet and let results speak. She wasn't trying to climb. She was trying to survive without shrinking. Lucas continued to keep his distance. Always professional. Always formal. But she felt something under the surface. A shift. A weight. Like he was watching her with more than curiosity. Like he was waiting for something. She didn't ask. She didn't push. She just kept doing what she'd always done. Listen harder, work faster, disappear when the room no longer needed her. But disappearing was getting harder. Because more and more, people were starting to notice her. And not just for the languages. The invitation came as simply as everything else he did. No build-up, no explanation. Late Thursday, after a long call with the Brussels office, Lucas stood by the door as Anna packed up her notes. "I'd like you to come to my house," he said. She looked up. "Why?" "Because I think it's time you understood who you're working for." She hesitated. Not because of fear. Because it didn't sound like a command. It sounded like something he rarely used, an ask. He didn't wait for her answer. Just handed her an address. 7:30. Friday. That night she didn't sleep much. She didn't know what to expect. There were rumors about Lucas, always rumors. That he was cold, that he didn't date, that he lived alone by choice, not necessity. But none of those stories ever explained the look he gave her sometimes when no one else was watching. The house wasn't what she imagined. Not glass and steel. Not guarded. It was quiet, low-lit, tucked behind a narrow gate. He opened the door himself. No staff. No suit. Just him in a soft shirt and sleeves rolled halfway, barefoot on wood floors. "You came," he said as if surprised. "You asked. Most people don't say no to me. Then you haven't been asking the right people." He almost smiled. Almost. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and something cooking on the stove. She followed him into a kitchen that felt lived in. He handed her a glass of water like it was the most natural thing in the world. No wine. No pretense. Just two people in clothes too ordinary for anything formal. He made pasta from scratch. No small talk. No distractions. She watched his hands work without ceremony. "I used to cook with my father," he said, tossing salt over boiling water. He cleaned hotel rooms for 20 years. Saved every franc so he could buy a piece of land. His dream was to open a place where no one ever felt like they didn't belong. Anna said nothing. She waited. He died before it happened. Stroke. Fast. I was 16. I spent the next 10 years trying to make the dream real. Not for him. For me. To prove something. He didn't say what. He didn't have to. "My mother worked cleaning apartments," she said. "When she got sick, I dropped everything. The scholarships, the internships. There was no one else. I held on to language because it was the only part of myself I didn't have to trade away." He looked at her then, really looked. "I heard that in your voice the day you answered the phone." She ran her thumb along the rim of the glass. "You didn't say anything. Because I didn't know what to say. Not until now." Dinner was quiet, but not uncomfortable. He asked about her studies. She asked about his first hotel. They talked like people who had known each other in a different life. When the plates were cleared, they moved to the small porch. Rain had started. Soft. Distant. She watched the sky and listened to the silence stretch again. "Why me?" she asked finally. "I know talent isn't rare. So why this?" "Because you never asked for it," he said. "You never sold yourself. You just kept showing up and doing the work. That's rarer than you think." "People think you're cold," she said. "Sometimes you are. I have to be. This industry doesn't forgive softness, but notices silence. And the way you walk into a room without needing to take it over, that's not cold. That's discipline." She turned to him. "Do you see everyone this clearly?" "No," he said. "Just you." She didn't look away. Neither did he. "This isn't part of the job, is it?" she asked. "This moment." "No," he said. "It's not." "Then what is it?" He didn't answer with words. He reached for her hand, slow and careful, like he was waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. "I haven't felt this in a long time," he said, "and I don't want to mistake it for gratitude or projection. But if there's something real here, I need to know I'm not imagining it alone." She let the silence stretch before she answered. "It's real, but it's terrifying, because I worked so hard to be seen for my mind. I'm not ready to lose that." Then we don't move until you say, he said. This stays here. No one else knows. Nothing changes unless you want it to. The rain got louder. She closed her eyes just for a second. I don't want to lose this either, she said. But if we cross that line, we don't get to pretend again. I'm not pretending, he said. Not with you. For a long time, they just sat there. No kiss. No promises. Just a quiet agreement made under falling rain and the softest kind of honesty. When she left that night, he didn't follow. He didn't need to. And when she got home, she didn't cry. She wrote. She opened an old notebook and wrote everything she remembered about the way he looked when he talked about his father. About the way she felt when he said her silence meant something. She fell asleep before she finished the last sentence. But the feeling stayed. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was borrowing someone else's life. She felt like maybe, finally, it was starting to be her own. The article dropped on a Monday. No warning. No heads up. Just a headline tucked under a tabloid's business section. Renard's mysterious protege from housekeeper to power player in 6 weeks. The piece wasn't long, but it was loaded. A blurry photo of Anna walking beside Lucas after a meeting. Quotes from unnamed staff. Hints that she'd received favoritism. A vague reference to unverified reports of a personal connection. By noon, it was everywhere. Staff whispered in elevators. Department heads grew colder. A few colleagues stopped speaking to her altogether. One senior assistant who used to smile at her in passing called her the charity case just loud enough to be heard. Anna didn't respond. She went to work, hit her deadlines, kept her head down. But the air changed. Meetings she used to lead were suddenly rerouted to others. A client who had praised her 2 weeks before now requested a different liaison. And worst of all, her inbox filled with silence, messages ignored, calls unanswered, requests redirected. It wasn't official. No one told her to leave. But the message was clear. You don't belong here anymore. Lucas said nothing for 2 days. No message. No meeting. On Wednesday, she knocked on his office door, unsure whether she was more angry or afraid. He looked up from his desk, tired, not surprised. I saw it, he said. I thought it might die on its own. I was wrong. You didn't deny it. I don't comment on rumors. It's not just a rumor to me. I'm the one being dragged through it. I know. Then why haven't you said anything? Because if I speak, they'll say it's proof. If I defend you, they'll say you're protected. If I stay quiet, they say I don't care. There's no version where you win if I get involved. She stood there, arms crossed, voice low. Do you think I asked for any of this? No, he said. I think you earned every piece of it. But that doesn't matter to people who need a reason to hate someone who rose too fast. So what do I do? She asked. Stay and let it eat me alive? He didn't answer right away. He looked at her like someone forced to choose between logic and feeling. You do whatever you need to survive. I won't stop you, but I won't pretend this isn't killing me to watch. She left his office without saying goodbye. That night, she packed a suitcase. Not because she had a plan, just because she didn't know how to stay. She booked a one-way ticket to Amsterdam and sat on the floor for 2 hours staring at the confirmation email. She didn't cancel it, but she didn't board either. The next morning, there was an envelope under her apartment door. No return address, just her name. Inside was a letter from the International Board of Hospitality Development, an invitation to join their Global Talent Initiative, a 3-year rotation program for multilingual professionals, beginning with a post in The Hague. It wasn't just a job. It was recognition, independent, unattached, earned, the kind of offer people dreamed about. She stared at the paper, then at the window, then at the copy of the tabloid, still sitting on her kitchen counter. That afternoon, she went back to the hotel, not to clock in, not to finish a shift. She walked into the administrative floor and asked for a room, a private conference space. She sent out one email to Lucas. Subject line, no assumptions. He arrived 15 minutes late, not out of disrespect, but because he didn't want her to think he'd been waiting. She stood when he walked in. No small talk. She handed him the letter. It's real, she said. They want me to start in 3 weeks. He read it, then folded it slowly. You deserve it. You're not going to talk me out of it. Would you listen if I tried? No, he nodded. She looked at him harder than she ever had before. I need to know something, and I need you to be honest. Ask. Did you ever doubt me? Not once. Did you ever think I didn't earn this? Not for a second. Then why didn't you say it out loud when it mattered? Because I was protecting you. From what? From the version of this where people said the only reason you made it was because you had someone powerful behind you. If I had defended you, they would have erased you. They erased me anyway. I know. He stepped back. Just a little. Enough to give her room. I was wrong, he said. I should have stood next to you when they started talking. Even if it burned everything down. Her voice dropped. You didn't trust me to survive it. I trusted you too much. I thought you'd want to fight alone. I didn't, she said. I wanted someone to say I mattered out loud. Not just behind closed doors. They stood in silence. Two people who had built something impossible and now stood at the edge of losing it. You're going to go, he said. Aren't you? I think I have to. I won't ask you to stay. Why not? Because if you stay for me, it'll never feel clean. And you deserve clean. She nodded. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Anna, he said, not turning around. If you ever come back, it won't be as my assistant. It'll be as my equal. Then he walked out. She didn't cry. Not until much later. In a cab ride home, as the city blurred past, she finally let it go. Not just the pain, the pressure, the pretending, the need to prove anything. She held the letter in her lap and closed her eyes. She had been given a choice. Not out of pity, not out of fear, out of earned, undeniable merit. And this time, she would choose for herself. Anna returned 3 months later, not with headlines, not with fanfare. She flew in under a different name, booked a quiet room 2 blocks from the Grand Mira, and spent her first days not looking for Lucas, but for a meeting. One with the board. She wasn't there to ask for her job back. She wasn't there for apologies. She came with a proposal. A policy actually drafted during long nights in The Hague, shaped by data and precedent. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic. A formal hiring initiative to recruit and protect immigrant workers in high-skill hospitality roles. Built to last beyond any single story, hers included. The meeting was tense. 10 executives. One agenda. Some remembered her. Some didn't. Some only remembered the scandal. She didn't blink. She outlined wage caps, advancement metrics, vetting procedures. She didn't mention herself. She didn't say her name once. When it was over, she waited. The head of the board sat back in his chair and asked the only question that mattered. Why are you really here? She answered without hesitation. Because you all watched what happened to me. You watched the story twist. And you didn't stop it. Now you have a chance to rewrite it for someone else. Don't miss that again. They didn't give her an answer that day, but they scheduled a follow-up. That was enough. She didn't go back to the hotel. Not right away. She walked the side streets instead. Ate dinner alone. Slept like someone who hadn't for weeks. On the 4th day, a message came. Not from Lucas. From HR. The board had approved the pilot. Quietly. No press release. No signatures yet. But it was real. They asked if she'd return as an advisor. She said yes. And then she walked through the doors of the Grand Mira again. Not as an employee, not as a scandal, but as someone with leverage. She went straight to the executive floor, not stopping to look at the stairs she knew would follow. She didn't go to Lucas's office. She went to the archives, requested a visitor access file, one from 3 years ago, under her mother's name. It took 20 minutes. The records clerk didn't ask why she wanted it, just handed her a printed log and said, "There's something unusual here." Anna read it in silence. Her mother had received anonymous payments during her final hospitalization. Regular ones. Always in the same amount. Always labeled private aid. From a donor with no listed contact. Just a foundation account. But one field wasn't redacted. The origin bank code matched an account registered to Renard Holdings. Anna folded the page. Put it in her bag. Walked to the corner office. She didn't knock. Lucas looked up, startled. Then relieved. But he didn't stand. Didn't move. Just said her name. Anna. She sat down. Placed the folder on his desk. Opened it. "You helped my mother," she said. "Without telling me." "I did," he said. "Why?" "Because she needed it. And because I could." "You could have said something." "No. If I had, you would have owed me. You would have tried to pay it back." "That's not why I did it." "Then why?" "Because when I saw her paperwork in the system years ago, something hit me. I recognized the name. I looked deeper, and I saw a girl, 19, trying to hold her family together while building something bigger than herself. I didn't want to break that. I wanted to make sure it survived. She stared at him. Why me? He breathed in, then said it slowly, without flinching. Because when I looked at you, I didn't see talent. I saw myself. I saw a kid scrubbing floors, pretending he wasn't starving. I saw someone trying to outwork the silence, trying not to be seen unless it was for the right reasons. I saw someone worth betting on. She swallowed. You didn't tell me any of this, because it wasn't the right time. And now you don't need me to say it, but I'm saying it anyway. He stood, crossed the room, not close, not assuming. You didn't get here because of me. You got here in spite of everything. I just gave the wheel one turn. You did the rest. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She nodded once, then reached into her bag and pulled out the approved board document. It passed, she said. Your silence didn't. He took the paper. Read the header. You did this alone. No one does anything alone. But I didn't need a title to do it. I needed space. Will you stay? He asked. Not as what you were. As what you've become. She shook her head. Not yet. Will you come back? Maybe. But next time, not under your name. Under your own. Under something I built. He nodded. No argument. No guilt. Just understanding. Before she left, he asked one more thing. Do you hate me for not telling you? No, she said. But I think you were afraid I wouldn't believe I'd earned it. Were you? Not anymore. She left without looking back. The hotel didn't feel smaller. It didn't feel bigger. It just felt finished. At least for now. And somewhere along the walk back to her flat, she understood something she hadn't before. The twist hadn't been that Lucas helped her. The twist was that she no longer needed him to. That she could say thank you and still walk away. That she could return not as a symbol or a survivor, but as a woman who wrote the next chapter herself. They never made an announcement. There was no press release, no formal unveiling. But when Anna appeared beside Lucas at the UN Hospitality Forum in Geneva, no longer behind him, not below him, but beside him, people noticed. She stood on stage with translated policies in one hand and the signatures of 50 global CEOs in the other. The Global Opportunity Initiative launched that day wasn't just a document. It was a shift, a new standard, a signal that silence wasn't neutrality and talent didn't always wear the right name tag. Anna didn't speak about her past. She didn't have to. The world had already told her story. She used the spotlight to redirect it. To workers still waiting to be seen, to young women still repeating vocabulary in a cracked subway windows, to anyone who had ever been passed over because they didn't look like someone worth betting on. She became the face of the campaign, not because of scandal, but because of clarity. She didn't represent perfection. She represented persistence. Lucas rarely gave interviews, but when asked what it was like working with her again, he said, "It's not working with her. It's following her lead." They didn't appear on magazine covers. They didn't throw parties. But sometimes, in quiet corners of cities they'd once only dreamed of reaching, people would spot them together. Coffee before a boardroom, walking the edge of a conference center, her hand brushing his as they moved through crowds. It wasn't loud, but it was real. When they returned to Amsterdam, it wasn't for a deal. It was for something smaller. They visited the first language center where Anna had studied Dutch. The building was worn down, but the plaque on the wall still bore her name, donated anonymously years earlier. She never told him it was hers. He didn't need to ask. That afternoon, they stood outside the new Mira Europa, the hotel that rose on the same street where she once practiced conjugations in the rain. He asked if she wanted to go inside. She said no. She just wanted to see it from the outside a little longer. The place where everything began. The place where everything changed. They didn't speak, but he reached for her hand. She let him, and as they looked at the building together, neither of them said the words, "What's next?" Because they already knew. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that quiet people can make loud impact, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, hit like, share this with someone who still believes in second chances, and subscribe to Cracks of Light so we can keep bringing you stories that matter. Because sometimes the ones who rise the farthest are the ones no one saw coming.